What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Gaming Without Parole. Sitting across from me this week and every week, Desra.
And sitting across from me is Brian Paul.
Who, where, when, where, how?
Wow, look at the Twitter thing in the world.
Oh, hey.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
If you don't know what we're talking about, it's because we don't either.
Yeah.
Speaking of what we're talking about, what are we talking about today, Des?
Today we are talking about, let's call them Tetris clones, or Tetris-style games.
It's my favorite genre of game.
It's a pretty good genre of game.
Yeah, I'm lying.
Yeah,
I'm totally
I'm not.
full of it.
It is a pretty good genre of game. So the original Tetris was invented way back in, that would be an important piece of information.
I don't have that.
Yeah, but anyways, Alexei
Pajitnov.
Thank goodness we edit. Alexei Pajitnov. We're not going to edit?
Not
okay.
editing.
All right.
People like it when I screw up.
He developed this on his own when he was working for basically a Russian university. It originally made it, handed out to a few friends. It kind of got out into the wild and became this international juggernaut. When we started this, like, you know what? Let's talk a little bit about the history of Tetris, because that's going to be a cool story. Made under the Iron Curtain, the USSR. He doesn't make any of the royalties. Eventually makes it out. You know, capitalism flourishes, and he makes all his money back, and everyone's happy. No. This is a insane story with just all sorts of lawsuits back and forth. Crazy people going and selling the rights that didn't have, access to it. And yeah, it's bizarre. There is a documentary called Tetris from Russia with Love, made by the BBC. You can go to topdocumentaryfilms.com and watch the full thing there. We'll probably not have a link in the show notes, but
no one actually edits this anymore.
No.
Oh,
okay.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah,
Support us on Patreon.
Apparently, you have to feed interns.
No.
Yeah.
No, they're good. But there's so much other stuff other than the history of Tetris to talk about with Tetris.
Yes.
And I think my favorite thing, like when we started doing research for these types of games, was something that's affectionately known as the Tetris effect.
Yes.
Right? Which is a more like kind of a layman's term for, or a specific example of hypnagogic imagery.
Hypnagogic.
Now, if you don't know what this is, if you've ever played Tetris for a ridiculous amount of time, or if you've ever played any game for a ridiculous amount of time, it happened to me during The Witness, it happened to me during Tetris, it happened to me, I think, when I was a kid, Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, yeah, no question.
But generally, like more puzzly based things, it happens to people, non-video game related as well, jigsaw puzzles, Rubik's Cube. If you do any of this for a significant amount of time, what happens is, when you finally try to go to bed, and you close your eyes and you're in that in-between state, when you're not quite dreaming, but you're not quite awake, and like you're seeing, basically, falling blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Mario jumping, or Rubik's Cube, or puzzle solutions to things that you aren't actually looking at. I think this is when people say that you actually learn in your sleep, you get better at your sleep.
Yep.
I think this is your brain trying to create solutions to all the puzzles that you've been encountering all day.
Oh, yeah. No, it's definitely a way for your brain to process through all that. I know when I was really into Tetris, not only would I have that going on, like I went ahead and this was, I don't know, in middle school or whatever, would buy notebooks with graph paper pages and just fill them with Tetris shapes.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Now I had a problem.
Wow.
But there was actually something, I was reading an article on the Tetris effect. Literally, people who have anterior grade amnesia, which is people who can't form new memories, like 51st dates, that actually does happen to people. What's really interesting is they can be playing Tetris or Tetris-type games during the day, have no memory of playing the game, but still have the Tetris effect hypnagogic illusions later. So it's really there's actually some deep brain stuff going on.
Yeah, and they actually say if you play Tetris to this extent, or these types of games to this extent, it can actually train your brain, and it helps you to not create tragic. Oh shoot! What was I trying to say? Tragic.
I don't know.
Yeah. Is if you have tragic post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
It actually prevents you from having your brain from creating the stressful images and that kind of stuff to begin with. So you never actually have to go through PTSD because these types of games prevent you from creating those types of memories. It's really strange. Like, I know I just butchered the entire thought process around it, but that's what I do here. I butcher things.
I think
Brian the Butcher.
I think we have someone we can talk to about this. We should send a question to the Research Guild.
Nate, if you're listening,
yes.
And there's a possibility you are.
It might actually happen.
He's a Patreon supporter.
Yeah, is this a real thing, or are we just completely pulling this out of nowhere?
Possibly. Nate, get back to us.
All right.
If you haven't watched the Research Guild, go to the Research Guild. Check them out on iTunes.
iTunes, yeah, basically everywhere where good podcasts are sold.
All right. Without Parole games?
No, good podcasts.
Damn it. So why don't you take us away? Let's talk about our first favorite Tetris-style game.
Yeah, this was a game I had completely forgotten about until I started doing the research. In fact, I'd actually had my list and told Ryan, oh, these are the games I'm going to cover. I was like, oh, let me look at this one last article, and I had completely forgotten the existence of this game, which is kind of heartbreaking because this is one of my favorites. It's called Zoop. Z-O-O-P.
Yeah.
This came out for just about everything at the time. It came out in 1995 by Hookstone Productions, were the designers, published by Viacom, which is, I didn't even know they were
in the game industry.
Yeah. It came out for Game Boy, Game Gear, Genesis, Super Nintendo, Atari Jaguar, Sega Saturn, PlayStation, DOS, and Mac.
I have the Jaguar version. I've never played it.
You should. Well, actually, I can't speak to that version specifically.
Oh, I bet it's the best one.
I'm sure it's not. There's a lot of really big variations between different games. Clearly, like the biggest outlier is the Game Boy version, which is not only black and white because it's a Game Boy game, but the shapes are radically different from all the other games.
And not shown here. We're not editing this.
We're not. Okay. No. Basically, if you haven't played Zoop, or if you can't figure it out from what's not being shown behind me, there's the game field. There's a little triangle, which is the piece that you control. You control
it's like
where
a ship.
It points. Yeah, a little ship.
A little asteroids ship.
You can. Actually, exactly like that. I can control where it points, and then it's in a grid, a 4x4 grid, so you can move up 4 spaces or across or left or right 4 spaces. Around the outside, pieces are slowly dropping in. The pieces are of 4 or 5 different colors. Green, orange, yellow, blue.
Colors.
Colors. Yeah,
colors.
Colors, those things. 450 nanometers for blue, if anyone cares. Yeah.
Also, just eat Lucky Charms. It's like the same thing.
There's these kind of very, very 90s graphic design to this thing. This looks like, exactly what you would imagine a shape-based game that came out in 1995 would look like.
It was like Minesweeper. It's pretty basic.
Yeah, it is. And basically what happens is as the colors slowly go in, whatever color your little arrow is, if you zoop or hit, shoot and hit that color, it disappears. If it's a different color than your piece, it hits and turns that color. So if your piece is orange and it hits a green piece, now your little arrow is green. And that's basically the main mechanic of the game. Your goal is to just stop them from getting to the center square you're in. It's got some interesting, combos, your usual kind of line clearing things. You hit this one special item, that whole line disappears, or that whole color, or what have you. Something that makes this sort of unique, it goes again to the graphic design. The colors of the background, this is why the Game Boy version is a little lacking. But in the other versions, the colors of the background aren't just random, they're there to actually make it harder. They're really, sometimes they're very high contrast, sometimes they're very low contrast, to really make it hard to see the colors of the pieces and the way they're moving in.
Which is fantastic because the Game Boy screen is already so easy to see.
Yeah. Again, the Game Boy version is an outlier. The music is pretty funky. It's this sort of kind of freeform jazzy kind of thing. It was a blast. One little kind of the Des Nugget blockbuster.
Wait.
Yes.
Can we trademark the Des Nugget?
No, I don't know.
The
moment it came out of my mouth, I regretted it.
Love it.
But yeah, I like these weird little factoids that I find. Blockbuster partnered with Viacom, or I shouldn't say Viacom partnered with Blockbuster, to offer free rentals of this game. They really wanted to push it. And of course, because none of you have heard of it, it was massively successful. And in my research, I found one little really tantalizing hint that Tiger had licensed it. So maybe there was a Gamecom version.
Yeah, pull out those old Gamecoms or your Tiger R Zone, and who knows, maybe there's a homebrew out there somewhere.
Yeah. But this, if you can find a version of this for whatever system you have kicking around, it's absolutely worth playing.
I can't wait. It's been sitting on the wall for ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just filled that whole little hole next to Zool.
Zool.
Zool 2.
Zoop and Zool.
Yep, for to complete, not to complete, but to really flesh out that Jaguar collection I'm building. Well,
What we got?
so I think the next game on the list is really super duper simple.
Okay.
It's the name of it is the most complicated thing, and that's Super Hypercube.
Super Hypercube.
It's just fun to say, Super Hypercube.
I love hypercubes.
Right?
Tesseracts.
Super Hypercube. So I talked about this a little bit on the PlayStation VR episode. If you haven't watched that, go back and watch it. It's pretty awesome. And then, so what's the next game? No, Super Hypercube is maybe and possibly the most Tetris-like game on our list. I could be wrong, but it's Tetris in VR, and the deal is with that, it's right. It's not just creating lines. What you're actually doing is you're taking a shape made up of blocks, and you're trying to fit it into a hole in the wall, and the wall is coming at you, or you're maybe going toward the wall, one or the other. Can't really tell. And you have to rotate the block to fit through the hole in the wall that's on its way. And I'll tell you, the cool thing about doing this in VR is that like right in front of you is the shape, and you're twisting and turning it, and then like every so often you're like
Trying to look around it.
you look around it at the hole in the wall, and you're like, how do I make this thing that looks like an alligator look like an L with like a bird out of it? Like, and you're constantly like looking at that and going, and then coming back and being like twisting it around, and like, oh, there you go, and then you hit a button and you jam it through the hole. Yeah, I said that. So there's power-ups and stuff like that, but you know what? Again, I've already talked about this game, not extensively, but just enough that I don't want to talk about it entirely all over again. The Des Nugget I found, though, while doing the research today, I love it, is that it was supposed to be an Oculus Rift game.
Oh, those bastards.
Right? So, let's see. It was originally an Oculus Rift game, but was canceled because, now that's the quote from Wikipedia, so who knows what the reference is really from. Oculus Rift founder Palmer Luckey contributed to an internet shitposting organization backing Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. And that's why the developer, they were like, we want nothing to do with Oculus Rift. We are not going to make our game for you anymore. So it became a PlayStation VR launch title.
So much about that is weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know that shitposting was an actual term.
Oh, it's absolutely an actual term.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
But also, I stay far away from politics.
Yeah.
Not
well,
commenting
that's
on this story at all.
That's a Reddit Edgar thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shitpost is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So just really strange. I mean, apparently, if it was on Oculus, maybe it never would have come to PSVR. So whatever the reasons, I'm glad it happened because I really like Super Hypercube.
Definitely.
It's pretty good stuff. So yeah, that's all it is. The block gets ridiculously complicated because every time you go through a hole in the wall, it adds a block or two to the shape. And eventually you just have this like gigantic asteroid type thing. Second asteroid reference in like 5 minutes. And you're just like, I don't know how this fits through that hole. It gets really hard really fast.
So it's just like the Kinect hole in the wall, right? Remember hole in the wall?
Oh, it's just like that, where you move your body to fit through the hole. Yeah,
Except
this is
you're
like
just moving the piece.
Right. All of this comes from like Japanese game shows.
Okay.
These are all variations on a theme that's very common over there.
All right.
What's up?
So what's up? This one is I'll be the first to admit I'm kind of stretching the definition of a Tetris-like game.
Ooh, I got one of those coming up.
Yeah, this is a game that involves shapes. Mm-hmm. It involves shapes falling. Mm-hmm. And involves you moving those shapes strategically to achieve a goal.
It's Tetris.
Well, not really. It's called The Art of Balance. Yay. Very serene.
Oh.
Yeah. This was a WiiWare game. It originally came out in 2000... Ooh.
Something.
Oh, yeah, sorry, 2010.
Okay.
Then the Art of Balance Touch was a 3DS version that came out in 2012. And actually, I just found out there's a PS4 port in 2016. So really recent history. Wow.
I own this game.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I didn't actually... I was picturing it much differently when you described it earlier, but now it all clicked. I played this game. It was cheap. It was like $2 or something to download. Yeah. Difficult.
It is. It's very very, very inexpensive, very simple concept, but yeah, it can be really, really difficult. The graphics are just gorgeous. I mean, it doesn't seem like you would have much for, why bother? Just a simple puzzle game, but the environments that the game happens in are very peaceful, very relaxing. If you haven't played this, or you can't figure it out from that, it's basically you have this platform that's in water and some stone columns with maybe random shapes on top, and you have a pile of random shapes on the bottom. You pick up the shape. It kind of, when you pick it up, it sort of clicks into this like fake physics, I guess. When you're holding the piece, you can rotate it, I think in 90-degree, or sometimes less than that, depending on the shape. And then you put it somewhere on the playing field and you let go, and suddenly real physics takes over.
Gotcha.
So it'll drop. There's friction. It might drop and slide a little bit, or drop and fall into place, what have you. And your goal is to stack these pieces up.
Yeah.
There's a few different ways to play. As you go through, it'll give you different assignments. Like you may have an invisible line sort of at the top, and you have to balance all these pieces so they cross the line. Or you may have to build it so that it stays up for X amount of time. Or you might just have to say, all right, get all these pieces up onto this one platform without them falling over. Again, the sound design is actually really cool. The music is relaxing, but there's just this really satisfying, I don't know, it just sounds like pieces of wood or marble kind of clacking against each other. It sounds like a little thing, but it's attention to detail that gives everything this sense of reality. It could be very easily, like Tetris, just these little, bits falling with no reality, no solidity to them. But the sound and the way that the animation of the objects falling, it really gives a sense of place and reality to it.
It really threw me when I played this because the shapes look pretty much like Tetris shapes.
Yeah.
And
except the circles.
Yep. And they do fall from the version I played. You weren't picking up shapes and placing them like you were. They were just. It was very much more like Tetris, where like the shapes were randomly selected and they were falling, and so like you expect it to play like a Tetris game, but it really doesn't, because all of these real life physics do take over.
Yeah.
Unlike every other Tetris game, like these things do not move one block at a time. They slide, and so trying to stack blocks on top of other blocks, if they're not perfectly placed, just like in real life, they will start leaning very quickly. It's a very difficult game.
It is,
and deceptively so.
And there are some where there is no solution where they'll stack. You just have to, like I said, stack it so it stays up for the time to run out. And if you sit there trying to figure out how I'm gonna, it's not possible. You just have to hold it,
right,
and go.
Just before it all collapses, you hit the time.
Yeah, and thankfully everything about the environment is so relaxing, because it can be an incredibly stressful game otherwise. Yeah. So yeah.
So I said that the last game I talked about was maybe the most Tetris-like game. I don't know. Now I'm conflicted, because when the PSP launched, remember that day?
PlayStation Portable.
It was a very exciting day.
UMDs.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
So universal, we still use them to this day for everything.
I just remember seeing
universally useful, literally
bins of them, like at GameStop. Once the whole thing failed, and you just Armageddon for $2. Yeah. Still maybe a little bit too much. Yeah.
So when the PlayStation Portable launched, had a field day with that. I was totally convinced that these things were going to sell out. They were going to be the next big item, and I let hype get to me.
Yeah.
I loved my PSP though. The first time I turned it on, I saw that big, bright, beautiful screen. I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive.
This ain't
for a
no
handheld.
Game Boy. This is a real game system.
Yep. I'm like, it's like a movie theater in my hands. So one of the games I picked up, I picked up a bunch of crap on launch day because I just wanted to play everything I could. And Luminous was absolutely a game I picked up.
Yes.
And I didn't know anything about it. I was like, oh, it's a puzzle game, $30 or something. I was like, this is going to be fine. I don't know. So what it is, you can tell by the screen, for the most part, it's the colors involved are white and orange. So you are dropping 2x2 blocks. It's always 2x2. These are not varied shapes of any kind. 2x2 blocks. And so they're made up of 4 squares total, 2x2. And two of those there are two types of colors or patterns or shapes or whatever in those 2x2. And they start off as just basic orange and white squares, and then they slowly become other things. Okay. Every time you progress to a new level, it might be made up of circles, it might be made up of different colors, it might be made up of like little icons, but it's always two different ones. Right. So it sounds super duper simple because all you're really trying to do is create 2x2 squares. That's it.
Okay.
Right?
I can handle that.
So people always refer to this as like a music-based game.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not really.
Okay.
There's no real music base to it at all. The great thing about the music part of it, I guess, is that all the music is super catchy. Like the very first song on the very first stage, it's one of the catchiest songs ever, and I think it might be because I've heard it 1,000 times trying to play the first level. But then every time there are sound effects associated with the rotation and dropping of your block, and it sort of fits into the motif of that song.
Okay, so not music-based play, but your gameplay adds to the soundtrack.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the clearing of the blocks and everything, it all has a special sound effect associated with that level, with that song, and the background changes and everyone feels different.
Okay.
Now, but where the gameplay comes into play regarding the music is that some of these levels are very fast-paced musically. And so I told you, your goal in this game is to make 2x2 squares of the same color. And what you want to do is do as many of those as possible before this line that goes across the screen clears it. And that's how you do combos. You make as many as you can before the line clears it.
Sure.
Sometimes that line goes really fast. You got a fast-paced, frantic song playing. That line is going to go by really fast. So it's going to be real hard to make combos. You have to do it really, really fast, right? Real difficult. But even more difficult than that is when that line, you have like this nice, serene, quiet level, and it's just like kind of like these like I keep thinking like
Enya.
Yeah, you're on the right page.
Okay.
But that when you have like these nice, quiet, serene levels, that sweeping line goes by real slow. So if you're doing the same thing you were on the level before, trying to create as many combos as you can, as fast as you can, suddenly you're dropping blocks really fast, and you're filling up the whole screen, and that line's just going. And you're like, uh-oh, I'm suddenly filling up the whole screen.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right, so you have to slow your roll, like big time. So you do want to still make combos, but you have to be aware that it's going to take forever for that screen to clear. So that's where like the music aspect comes into play with your decision making. It's just an absolutely fantastic game. I think the best part about it is unlocking all these different skins. And they're not just skins. It's not just like, the level looks different on every level. Sometimes the level skin isn't just a different look. Sometimes there's a music video playing in the background. Sometimes there's like all these like flashing lights, and then like you look like you're in the middle of a rave. It's all meant to distract you. And very often it does a very good job.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's Luminous. There's been a ton of different variations on it. There's been sequels. Even Luminous 2 was on PSP. There's been one for the PS2. Pretty sure there's one for PS3. Vita. The original PSP one, though, as far as I'm concerned, probably the best one. And I think it comes down to the music selection.
All right.
Good stuff.
Luminous.
Yeah.
Cool. How are we on time?
We are. We have 6 minutes left.
Sweet. All right. So we'll do this super quick then.
Yeah, we'll do all the games.
Yeah. All right. So one thing I wanted to check in, we're talking about like the most Tetris-like games. Well, I was like, what's going on with Tetris right now? And
what is going on with Tetris right now?
Well, as one of the most recent variations of Tetris, because there's Tetris 2 and Super Tetris and blah blah blah, and Hatris and Wordtris, and all these other trisses. But right now, probably the biggest seller in the Tetris world is called Tetris Blitz.
Oh, you made me play this.
I did.
This is phenomenal.
This was one of those. I was looking it up. I'm like, oh, it's an EA. It's a free to play. Freemium game. Everything about this should be stay away. But I was like, you know what? I'll give it a try because I want to see, what's going on. Well, first of all, they didn't just license off the name to EA. Apparently, Mr. Pajitnov.
You'll get it right one of these
Please don't hurt us. Apparently, he actually helped develop this, so this isn't just kind of some license out of nowhere.
Yeah.
The best analogy I could say is this: if Tetris which came out in the 80s around the same time as, say, cocaine. If Tetris was cocaine, Tetris Blitz is just straight up crack. It is cheap. It is the nasty, easy version, and it is fast and intense. You don't, in Tetris, you start out slow, your piece comes down, you rotate it, you get to pick where it's going to go. No, not in this. And there's no real time limit. In this, you have a time limit. 2 minutes is the longest round. Okay, there are rounds that are much, much smaller than that, shorter than that. When the piece shows up at the top, instead of you choosing exactly where it goes, it basically does 3 to 4 kind of outlines of the best choices to put it. You hit one of those outlines, the piece immediately shows up there, the next piece is right there. You get this sudden and immediate and quick, like you have to move fast. Like when I handed it off to Brian, I was like, oh, yeah, go ahead and play. And he started playing at the normal pace. Like, no, you have to make 20 lines disappear. You have 30 seconds left. And also, the music, everything is shiny and bright and loud.
I'm sorry, I wasn't really paying attention. The last thing I heard you say was cocaine, and then my mind just drifted. Cancel the podcast.
Yeah,
I've got a number I need to call. Everything's shiny and bright.
Yeah, it's
ridiculous. I love that you don't actually play Tetris. It's like a choose your own adventure Tetris.
Yeah,
and you just got to make your decisions real fast.
And it sounds like that's going to be really shallow, and I guess it kind of is. But because you have to make these decisions so quickly, it adds this whole. What I was starting to say, in Tetris, you sort of ramp up to that high speed, and when you get to that, there's only like a couple spaces up at the top, and you're freaking out, going. Tetris Blitz gets you there as soon as you start playing.
Yeah. You would think that giving you only 3 or 4 options for where the piece
it depends on the piece, but usually 3 to 4.
It's you would think that would remove the skill from the actual Tetris concept, but what it really does is it forces you. I want to actually say that like you have to already be good at Tetris before you can be good at Tetris Blitz. You have to use all the skills you've ever learned in Tetris to be good at this game, and so it kind of like streamlines the complexity of it. I think you actually have to be better at Tetris to play Tetris Blitz than actual Tetris. Yeah,
because if there's no grace period. The pieces are coming so fast that if you set yourself up in a bad situation, it's just going to go exponentially bad, and there's no real kind of recovering from that. So yeah, it's like I said, it's free to play. It's on pretty much everything with the screen. iOS, Android, Windows Phone, Windows. So yeah, it's worth checking out. You want something you can pull out, play quick, and don't give these monsters money. Basically the only people who pay for
the freemium.
Yeah. It's don't support that. Play the game because it's free. Play the free stuff. Don't bother spending any money to buy coins and bonuses.
Somebody's got to do it.
No, you don't.
Now I'm going to sacrifice my last game.
Okay.
Because we're running low on time, as we always do here at Gaming Without Parole. But in order for you, because I think this is a far more interesting game than anything I have on my list.
No, which one are you talking about? Are we talking about
1D?
Okay, yeah. So I guess we'll finish off. This was going to be my honorable mention. I have 77 million.
You're doing great.
This is the best I've ever scored on any video game I've ever played. This is somewhere between an existential joke and a programming exercise. This is Tetris 1D. It is a one-dimensional Tetris game. Basically, the only action happens in that one little column there, and you have pieces that are one-dimensional segments of your traditional Tetris tetrads. So we have a 2 space, a 3 space, a 4 space. Yeah. Right. A 2, 3, occasionally a 4, and every once in a while a 1. The gameplay is you can press the arrow button down, and the pieces drop faster.
If you're not picking this up as fast as you should be, since it's only one column, you're creating lines every single time the piece hits the bottom of the screen, so it's clearing. So you're automatically getting a point, and so there is no way to lose.
Right, and there's really no way to play. So it's this wonderful existentialist joke about what's meaningful, meaningless, and I will say I have now made 51,662 lines. So basically, I started running. It's what is it? Just about midnight now, a local time. I started playing this at about 4 o'clock, and I kind of want to just keep this running forever, but we'll see.
I wonder. There is an option to enter your high score.
Yes, so it's so the version I have right now is on Congregate, if which you've never been on. Congregate is a huge repository of Flash games. So if you sign in to Congregate, you can load your high score and all that.
So stuff. Go check it out and see what the high score is. See how long somebody's let this run on their computer, basically.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's been quite a while. All right. So listen, this was an interesting topic for us.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. We're gonna let that run all night. Yeah.
Can we just fade out so that just like takes over the whole screen? Just like, okay.
I'm glad you're not snapping as much as you used to. I can only imagine. What just happened. Listen, this was something we came up with not last minute, but we were curious to explore Tetris games a little bit more. We know we always played Tetris games. We could have done like a 3-parter on this because the more we looked into it, the more games we found we wanted to talk about. The fact is, though, I think to create an interesting episode, we can't stretch something like Tetris out over 3. Unless you really want us to dive deep into that Tetris history, let us know.
No, we take 5.
Because we absolutely could do that. But we need your feedback. We want to know what you want us to talk about. There are so many genres and types of games, and sometimes we just want an excuse to talk about games.
Yeah.
So let us know what you want, and maybe we'll do it.
And to my fellow Zune owners, I'm sorry I left out Hexic. It was going to be mentioned, but I know there's like me and 2 other people who owned a Zune. So
I was going to talk about Gunpei, but that was about as far removed from Tetris clones as I could find.
All right.
So that's it. We'll definitely see you next week and the whole deal. And make sure you support us on Patreon and follow us on Instagram and all those good things. But we're going to call it quits for now because it's almost midnight. Time for the Gamescast.
Right. Oh, yeah.
For Gaming Without Parole, I'm Brian Paul.
I'm Desra.
And we'll see you next week.